Honey had been rescued from the street by Raymond when it was just a ball of fur trembling, and from then they became inseparable. They shared years of walking by He Park, silence shared in front of the television, and nights in which she curled up at his feet like Ya knew that he needed feel accompanied. The day that was arrested, Raymond barely could say goodbye. He saw how an officer I took Honey for the collar and dragged her out of the house without consideration, without understanding that she was tearing away the last thing he had left. What Raymond didn't know, locked away after the bars, was that she had also been condemned in a certain way, locked up in a municipal shelter where he refused to play, eat, or even look at the others. Every day during years, he would walk up to the shelter gate and sit down to wait. The shelter volunteers were quick to arrive and notice his behavior, Honey's stranger. He didn't respond to affection. He didn't accept and toys, nor not even it seemed interest by others' dogs. Simply remained there with his eyes fixed at the entrance, like, yeah, I would expect someone would cross that door in any moment. Many thought he was broken, others that it was old or unsociable. Only one person dared to look further there. Angela, a young volunteer who dedicated her weekends to walking dogs and clean cages, felt a connection immediate with that bitch Silent. There was something in his way of looking at her that spoke to him straight to the soul. Against the staff's advice, Angela decided take her home as temporary home without knowing that decision would change further lives than I imagined. At first, the coexistence was not easy. Honey ate little, he hid in the corners, and spent hours looking through the window as his heart were trapped in other place. Angela, with patience, infinite, he spoke to her every day. He caressed her gently and offered him a space sure. Little by little, the bitch was answering. I accepted caresses, moved lightly the tail, slept near the bed, but never stopped looking at the door. One night, while I brushed his fur in silence, Angela noticed a small plate worn out in a Honey's old necklace. She wiped it with a handkerchief and read, barely legible, Honey, property of our Cole. Intrigued, she looked for on the internet that name, and what she found left her frost. Raymond Cole, sentenced to death, accused of murder. 12 years in prison, and suddenly everything fit. For days, Angela didn't know that to do. I read and reread the articles about a Raymond Cole case, was looking for photos, interviews ancient, statements. Nothing seemed to indicate that this man had other life, other than that of prisoner 2475 B17, but there was something about Honey that wouldn't let room for doubt. His sadness had name and face. Then the unexpected happened. A call coming from prison state arrived at the shelter. Raymond Cole. In his last form, wish, there was written only 3 words, see Honey. The shelter staff, confused, located Angela. She, without a second thought, accepted. There was something she needed close, something that only that reunion could solve. On the day of the visit, Angela drove with the heart tight. Honey was going in the back seat, calm but restless, like sensed that something was about to happen. Upon arriving at the prison, the guards showed themselves skeptics. No one had permitted never the entry of an animal into that sector, but the request had the warden's endorsement. When they crossed the bars and walked by the cold concrete hallways, Honey tensed. Angela held her tightly, afraid she would get scared. However, when they arrived at the guarded courtyard where Raymond was waiting, something incredible. It happened. Honey recognized, he smell, energy, soul. He slipped off the leash, ran toward him with a howl that broke the air and jumped about. His chest with a strength that neither age, neither confinement had off. Raymond collapsed into floor, not by weakness, but by the wave of emotions that hit him full force. The guards, stunned, did not react immediately. No one expected a scene so. Some they even stepped back, uncomfortable with the intensity of the moment. Raymond, with tears in his eyes, falling freely by his tired face, he hugged Honey like, his body whole would search, remember each second lost. I knew. You hadn't forgotten, little one. she murmured between sobs, while the dog lay near his face with despair. Angela, from a distance, could not avoid cry too. There was been witness of something that escaped all logic, to everything protocol. What was happening? There it wasn't just a reunion. It was a silent cry of truth, of love, of something that hadn't happened, saying during years. If you felt something right now, please subscribe to the channel. We need your support to keep telling stories that deserve to be heard. But then, something broke the harmony of the moment. One of the guards, Mendel, approached with expression impatient, making gestures to the others to put an end to the scene. Honey, until then meek, changed immediately. She stood firm in front of Raymond. He showed the teeth and let out a deep, low, almost visceral growl. Everyone tensed. "What's wrong with him?" "To this bitch," Mendel asked, annoyed. No one answered, but Angela understood. Immediately, it was like if Honey were defending his human from an invisible danger. Something about that guard woke up a reaction, instinctive, uncontrollable. And then, first time in years, someone from the system. He began to wonder, what if Raymond was telling the truth? The warden, who had witnessed all from a corner of the courtyard, approached slowly, with the frowned. He was not a sentimental man, but something in the animal's reaction disturbed him. Which was he, Mendel's, role in this case? He asked in a low voice to one of the officers. It was the main witness. He said he saw Cole leave running from the crime scene with a knife, he replied. He's subordinate. The warden said nothing more at that time, but his gaze remained fixed in Mendel, who was regressing uncomfortable, knew that something was changing. What seemed like a simple gesture from a dog, there was planted a seed of doubt where before there was only condemnation. That same one night, the warden ordered review, he record complete. They requested the recordings of the trial, information police, the evidence archived. To everyone's surprise, some documents were incomplete. Certain surveillance videos were not included in the evidence presented to the jury. There were irregularities obvious. They called Tomas Guerrero, a young human rights lawyer, to observe the material. Thomas went over all night long in front of a screen, scoring, backspace, searching each detail. At 4:17 a.m., he jumped up. "This doesn't add up," he said. A security camera showed clearly a figure different fleeing the scene of the crime, with a complexion different from Raymond's. It was the start of something big. Thomas did not lose time. He requested officially reopened a case under suspicion of irregularities procedural. The judge, although reluctant at first, he agreed to a revision preliminary. The news ran fast inside the prison. Some prisoners, they hit the walls in sign of support. The guards, in change, they walked in silence, uncomfortable, especially Mendel. Angela, upon learning what was happening, led Honey to a time more to prison. This time, there was no emotion, neither joy. Honey walked up to the warden, sat down in front of him, and did not take his eyes off him during several minutes. "I think this bitch, this trying to tell us something we didn't know, see before," he muttered. He, with him heart further softer than in his 20 years of service. With the A's, the investigation progressed. Details began to come to light, buried by more than 1 decade. A DNA test that was never requested. A testimony that was modified at the last minute. The audio file of the emergency call, with seconds edited. Each new discovery was a slap in the face to the system. But the further developer was an anonymous letter sent years back to the court mailbox, which warned that the true killer was still free and that Raymond had been accused by someone's personal grudge inside the body police. No one had read. There was left forgotten among hundreds of documents. Tomas presented it as key part of the defense. The judge, visibly disturbed, he suspended the execution of the sentence. The suspension of execution was like an earthquake. For the first time in 12 years later, Raymond slept without the shadow of death about his bed. It wasn't free yet, but something had happened. Broken in the sea, Structure immovable from the system. The media, they started to interest by he case. Reporters, they surrounded the prison, trying capture images of Honey, who had converted unintentionally in symbol of a true deeper. The bitch who growled at injustice. They said the headlines. Raymond, however, remained in silence. It did not give interviews. I didn't ask for anything. I just asked see Honey from time to time in Wen, and every time she visited him, they would sit together in silence. It was not lack-speak. They had already saying all with a single glance. Meanwhile, Thomas and his equipment, they worked tirelessly. They located the technician in charge of archiving the recordings omitted. At first, he denied everything, but faced with the threat of charges, he confessed that he received an order direct. Don't put that video in a trial report. Who had it ordered? Mendel. The final piece fit. The arrest was requested preventive of the officer, and in his interrogation cornered, he confessed that he altered his testimony because Raymond had been a partner of his sister and wanted to punish him by an ancient family dispute. I didn't think it would go this far. I just wanted to ruin his life, he said in a voice trembling. No one in the room could contain the indignation. Everything had started with one lie, and during more than 1 decade, a man had paid with his life by she. Stories like this should not be stay in silence. Subscribe and help us give them a voice. The judge ordered immediately an extraordinary audience. In the packed room by journalists, lawyers, and human rights defenders, Raymond was taken handcuffed, but with his head held high. It was not the same defeated man as before. To his side, sitting in front row, was Thomas, with the documents in a hand and eyes full of determination. Angela also attended, with Honey lying at her feet, calm but attentive. When it arrived, it was Raymond's turn to speak, and he stood up with difficulty, took air, and said something that moved even to the further skeptics. I don't need revenge. I just want the truth to be known, and that no one further have to rely on the sense of smell of a bitch to be heard. The silence in the room was absolute. After hours of presenting evidence, videos and testimonies, the judge took the floor. This court quashes the sentence against Raymond Cole for vices in he process, tests, suppressed and manipulated testimony. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Raymond, without showing euphoria, closed eyes and let the tears they will speak by. Honey stood up and walked to his side, like Ye knew that at last his human was free. He hugged her as he world around did not exist. No one tried stop her. No law could object to that. At that moment, everything he system knew that it had been wrong, and that was a bitch who, with her instinct and its loyalty, opened them the eyes. The following days were overwhelming. Television programs, publishing houses, book publishers, even offers to convert his history in film. Raymond rejected everything. I wasn't looking for fame nor money. I just wanted peace. He bought one small house in the field, with a plot of land broad where Honey could run free. They planted a garden, installed a hammock, and by first time in years, slept without disturbances. Angela continued visiting them each week. Sometimes they cooked together. Times they just sat and watched his sunset. Honey, rejuvenated, seemed to have recovered his spirit, ran behind butterflies. He barked at the birds and returned to sleep at the feet of his human, as if the 12 years never would have passed. It was in one of those afternoon calm when Raymond, without planning it, began to write. I didn't know whether it was a book, a diary, or simply a way to get out what he was carrying inside. He titled it, The Bitch Who Saved Me. Each page was a mixture of memories, emotions, and truths that no one had ever told him, darling, listen before. It was not a complaint, nor a settling of scores. It was a love letter, written in silence, for that companion who never abandoned him. He wrote with a pencil old, on loose leaves, sitting next to Honey, who looked to understand every word. It was none to lawyer. It was unto test. It was her. He repeated in a low voice while wrote, if you've made it this, Fardy, It's because this story touched you. Subscribe to the channel so we can continue sharing transformative stories. With the time, that manuscript, it reached the hands of a small publisher, thanks to Angela. They published it without any major campaigns, without expectations, but something magical. It happened. The story went viral. People from all over He country. I wrote letters. I sent Honey's drawings, shared her own love stories with their pets. A movement was created on social media under the hashtag La Pera que me salvó. The book was translated into several languages, and in a few months, he became in a symbol world of loyalty, justice, and redemption. Raymond, however, remained aloof. He only accepted an interview, where he said, "If this is history serves so that another innocent be heard before he is late, then it was worth it." The years they passed by with a serenity deserved. Raymond spent his days tending the garden, walking by the trails, close to Honey, and answer some of the letters that came to him, especially those written by children. He loved reading the sincere words of those little ones who saw in Honey a heroine without a cape. Sometimes she received visits from law students, journalists, or activists who wanted to meet the man who had been branded by a bitch. He received them with humility, spoke little, but proudly showed them the tomb he had dug for the past. A stone at the bottom of the land, where there was written, "Here injustice rests, don't come back." Further, but as all true love story, that of Raymond and Honey also had its final point. One winter afternoon, while we're sleeping in his sofa with the fireplace lit, Honey began to breathe slower. Raymond noticed it immediately. He stroked her gently, without alarm. She opened the eyes one last time and looked at him with that deep calm that only they have, the beings that have loved without measure. There was no pain, nor complaint, just a sigh. He died, in his arms, like there was lived to his side, protecting it until the last breath. Raymond didn't cry that day. He just held her for a long time, silence, knowing that Honey had gone in peace, fulfilling his mission. The news of Honey's death moved thousands of people. Social media was filled with tributes, drawings, quotes, videos, and flowers from different parts of the country. Some animal shelters, they did adoption campaigns wearing your image as symbol of hope. Raymond, although grateful by all Honey, decided keep in silence for a while. He buried Honey under a large oak tree, in his corner further sunny garden, placed a plate simple with its name and a phrase that said, "She waited for me. I will remember her always." That place became in his sanctuary. Every morning, Raymond spoke to her as still were there, telling him what he dreamed or what he had cooked the night before. They passed weeks until Raymond returned to write. This time it wasn't a book nor a letter, but small phrases that he left on Honey's grave as notes for someone who still could listen to it. "It rained today, and I remembered you running through the storm. The sunflowers bloomed. You would have delighted." Those notes began to turn viral when Angela delicately shared one of them on the internet. People reconnected with the story. Many visited the grave, leaving flowers, toys, even dog biscuits. Raymond received with a cup of hot tea, listened to their stories and repeated them always the same. "If you doubt true love, remember Honey." Independent film director arrived at Raymond's door with a proposal different. "I didn't want to do a movie commercial. I wanted to tell Honey's story from your point of view, how lived he abandonment, the refuge, the reunion, the fight for his human. It is not a movie about prisons, neither trials. It is a movie about loyalty," Raymond told him. First time, he accepted without hesitation. He participated in his script, chose the actress who would play Angela, and donated the rights of animal foundations and organizations working against convictions unfair. When the film was released at a small festival, the applause lasted almost 10 minutes. Many cried, others they just stayed in silence, touched by a truth is that you don't need shout to be heard. The film, titled Honey, was nominated for several awards and was screened in schools. Universities and centers, community members from all over the world. It was used as tool educational to talk about justice, empathy, and children's rights animals. Raymond, in one of its few appearances public, went up on stage during a special function and said, "We are not coming here to remember a tragedy. We came to celebrate a miracle that walked on all fours and knew when his world was wrong." When he finished, he hugged Angela through tears. She had been a fundamental part of the trip. Thanks to her, Honey had a second opportunity. And thanks to Honey, Raymond got back the life he had stolen. With the time, Raymond founded a small shelter in his property. He named it Faithful Hope in honor of Honey. There, he received dogs, older, sick or traumatized animals that are almost nobody wanted to adopt. "If Honey waited by me, I can wait by they," he used to say. Each animal had his history, its scar, their pain, but they also found there's something that had happened to them, been denied. Time, patience, and love. Angela became his partner, and together they began to rescue street dogs, to visit schools to educate children about respect and responsibility. What began with a single dog has transformed in one movement silent with kindness. One afternoon, while they were planting flowers around the shelter, a child approached with his mother. They had handled 3 hours just to get to know place. The boy, shy, asked Raymond if Honey had been real. She smiled, invited him to sit under the oak tree and told him everything. When it was over, the child sank a bone-shaped cookie and left it next to the grave. "So that I don't have hunger there where it is," he said with an innocence that made Raymond feel a knot in the throat. It was at that moment that he understood that Honey's story was not just his. It was a legacy that touched anyone who had loved unconditionally. The shelter began to receive donations, anonymous thank you letters, even volunteers who came from other countries' states just to help during a few days. Some they brought dogs, old people who couldn't care more. Others, they came with stories that resembled Raymond's. Losses unfair, separations forced, long silences. Each one found in that place something that seemed to have been lost in a world. Compassion without judgment. Raymond had no schedules strict, neither big structures. I just listened, and that listen, sometimes silent, it was more powerful than any speech. Many said that being over there healed more than any therapy. This story move you? Then subscribe. That way we'll know it is worth continuing. A journalist who visited his shelter to make a report term staying a week. In his article wrote, "Faithful Hope is not just a shelter for animals. It is a shelter for broken people." That phrase became the motto of the place. Raymond had it carved in a stone next to the entrance. It was not visible from the road. Only upon arrival very close, one could read it. It was almost a secret among those who really needed find her. And it was like this as I wanted it to be, without fanfare, without cameras, a space for the soul. A piece of land where each scar was welcome and every history heard. As they passed by the years, Raymond aged with the serenity of someone who has made peace with the world. His hair turned completely white, his steps slower, but his look continued just as firm. Every morning visited Honey's grave with a cup of coffee and spoke to him as still were there. Sometimes he laughed alone, sometimes he stayed in silence for a long time, like listening to an invisible response. The new volunteers got used to it fast, to that routine. "It's your moment with her," Angela said when someone he asked, and everyone respected him, because they knew that in that corner of the garden, the truth was found, purest in all of history. One spring night, Raymond felt a pain in his chest. It wasn't abrupt, nor tragic, just a gentle warning that your body already was tired. He went to bed early. He caressed the 3 dogs that slept with him and closed eyes with a smile. There was no hospital, nor ambulance, no drama, just the sound of the crickets and a warm breeze coming in through the window. Did he The morning next, Angela found it in his bed, with the expression of peace that did not leave place of sadness. On the nightstand, there was a handwritten note that read, "When you see her, tell her I did my part, that now can rest peaceful." The funeral was simple, like he had it request. No long speeches or expensive flowers, just a few. How many people gathered around the oak, the same under the which Honey was resting. There, next to she, they buried Raymond, with a plaque that read, "Reunited at last." Many cried in silence, but they also smiled as they remembered as that man who had lost everything, recovered his life thanks to the love of a bitch. It was Angela who placed the last one stone on the grave, along with a photo of both, taken in one of those afternoon calm in the field, when nothing else it mattered to be together. With the time, the shelter followed working. Angela ran it with the same spirit of Raymond, faithful to each detail. Preserved he corner of the oak tree as place sacred, where each new volunteer should pass at least a time, not to leave flowers, but to listen. "Listen his history, and then you will know by that we are here," he said. Every dog rescued received a name inspired in some word of that legacy. Loyalty, hope, courage, patience. And in each barking, in each look, the presence of Honey and Raymond was felt, as yet his history would have been dissolved in he air, sowing life in each corner of the place. Years after, a 9-year-old girl years visited his shelter with his mother. He didn't speak much, hardly looked at the ground and caressed in silence to one of the dog's old people. Angela approached and asked him, "Yeah, I wanted to know Honey's story." The girl nodded. They sat down under the oak tree and, as so many times before, Angela told again from the beginning. The Raymond's confinement, Honey's wait, the reunion, the warning, the freedom, and that invisible bond that changed him everything. When she finished, the girl, with tears in her eyes, said, "I want to be like she. I want to take care of someone." So, Angela smiled at him. She knew in that instant that the story would still be alive, while existed someone willing to love that strong. The shelter, which at first was just an idea born of pain, became in a school of humanity. Those who arrived broken left complete. Those who came with fear found trust. And those who did not believe in second opportunities, they discovered that yes were possible. On the walls of the place were hanging photos of Raymond with the dogs, phrases from his book, and a special display case with the Honey's old necklace, the one that one day revealed the whole truth. I wasn't polished, neither restored. It was exactly as Angela had done found, as reminder that sometimes the answers aren't there in words, but in memory, silent, of those who never stop waiting. Every anniversary of the reunion, Angela organized a small ceremony under the oak tree. There was no speeches, officers, neither guests of honor. Just a table with cookies, a lit candle, and a box where people left letters addressed to Honey or Raymond. Some were of gratitude, others of consolation, others just to share that they had adopted a dog old or defended to someone who had been unfairly treated. Each letter was read in low voice by some volunteer, and, in the end, everyone remained in silence some minutes. That silence had converted in a tradition, because there, speechless, everyone, they knew what that one history meant. One day, a young lawyer had just arrived at the shelter. He wanted to thank personally the inspiration that led him to study law. "I didn't know that wanted to do with my life until I read The Bitch Who Saved Me," he said in a voice firm. Angela hugged him tightly. She was no longer just a history. It was a seed that followed germinating. And while there would be people like he, like the girl, like the volunteers who arrived each week, Raymond and Honey never would be really buried. They lived in each act of justice silent, in each rescue, in each look faithful as a dog directs his human. And so, his history continued beating, more alive than ever. Many years later, when Angela was already combed grey hair and the shelter there was grown more than Raymond would have imagined, a Reporter asked him, yeah, sometime thought in close he cycle, in let the story rest. Angela smiled tenderly and pointed the oak. That story doesn't need rest. She already fulfilled his mission. But we, who are here, not yet. Because in every new day, in each rescued animal, in each person touched by that true silently, the story of Honey and Raymond continued waking up consciences, not as a sad tale, but as a living promise that true love, the kind that doesn't give up, can change it all. And so ended, or rather continued, the story of a man who was forgotten by all, except for a bitch who waited for him. The same bitch who, with a simple growl, unearthed the truth. The one who taught the world that loyalty needs no words, that love knows no bars, and that even the most silent of souls can shout justice. Raymond Cole did not die like a prison number. He died as a symbol, and Honey, the dog who saved him, was left eternally in the memory of those who sometime they believed that everything was lost. Because while exists someone who remembers his history, nothing will be truly lost. If this story I'm staying with you, don't go without subscribe. It's the only way we can continue bringing these truths to the world.